if you live in a climate where there's potential for frost, like there is in the UK at certain times of the year, it might be difficult to plant certain things outside for the risk of them getting damaged by the frost. So in this video, what I'm going to do is show you a technique for growing climbing beans or peas or any climbing vegetable that you can start inside and then transfer them outside when the weather is less risk of frost. It's not a technique that I've invented, it's something that I've seen on somebody else's video, and it's something I'm just trying for myself. So have a look at the video, give it a try for yourself, and if you like the video then give it the thumbs up, and if you want to subscribe to the channel for future videos on how to sow and grow fruit and veg and a few recipe ideas, then don't forget to press the subscribe button. So I've got a piece of discarded old guttering, as you can see here, and before I came today I drilled holes in the bottom. These are drainage holes, and what I'm planning to do is just fill that up with compost, and multi-purpose compost. I'm going to plant my Mangetout seeds that I collected from last year's plants. These are a variety called Oregon Sugar Pod, so we'll see how they go. And the idea is that because they're grown in the guttering, I can grow them inside, then when they're ready, where the weather's better, I can just plant them straight out, just slide them off the guttering into a pre-prepared trench where I want them to go. So here you can see I've filled now the guttering up with multi-purpose compost. I haven't got any stop ends, so I've just made the compost just a little bit short from the end. Now normally if I plant these straight into the ground, these seeds, I normally put them about 40 to 50 millimeters apart, but because I've got so many, I've got 2 tubs of these Mangetout from that I've collected from last year's crop. I put them fairly close together on the basis that some of them may not grow, and if I do get a load, then I can, if I want to, I can thin them out and move them. All I'm going to do now is lay the rest in exactly the same way right to the end of the compost, and then push them down with my finger, and then make sure that they're all covered, and then give them a good watering. So I've just put a little bit more compost over the top of the seeds and just give it a good water. I'd imagine within about a week and a half possibly we'll start to see some germination, because remember this is an internal environment, and even though today's not very nice, the temperature in here gets a lot warmer than it will outside. So here are the Mangetout in the gutter, believe it or not, after less than 2 weeks. They look really good. So I'm not going to let them get much taller before I plant them out. The weather's changed to a little bit warmer here. There's very limited possibility of any frost, and I don't want to get them too tall because I want them, when they get to the right size, to find their way up the cage. So I'll probably give them another day or two and then plant them out, and then in about 2 or 3 weeks time I can start another lot in the poly house ready to plant out. So I've got a bit of succession planting. So something you need to consider when you're growing any type of growing vegetable, such as beans or peas or even Mangetout like we're going to put in today, is what support you're going to be providing. Now I've got these metal support panels here, which I've had for a number of years, which were left from a developer who was doing a housing estate right next to the allotment. So they're really handy, but of course not everyone's going to have them. So you need to think about what other type of support you might want to include for yourself. It doesn't need to be anything as strong as this, but it just needs to be able to support the growing peas or beans or whatever's growing, so that they, as they grow, they've got something to hang on to. A timber trellis might be something that you may have available. That might be a good idea, or you might even just use netting. So just put in supports at either end, and just maybe a support in the middle, and put some pea netting or something like that. But there are things that you can buy to provide and support for your peas or your beans. So this is where we're going to locate the Mangetout today, from the gutter. And what we're going to do, the first thing we're going to do is to dig a little trench out just at the front here to accommodate the guttering when I bring it out of the poly shed. So what I'll do is just start digging my trench out. This ground's already been pre-dug, and I want to make the trench so that it's wide enough to accommodate the gutter, but not too deep so that the gutter will sink into it. I want to do this all the way along the full length of the cage. I'm not exactly certain of the full length of the guttering, but I make it probably longer than I need. I can always put the soil back, so it's probably, I'd say it's probably around about 50 millimeters deep. Any stones you can take out, because this is where the roots are eventually going to find their way to growing. And then we'll go and get the guttering, and we'll move the Mangetout from the guttering into the trench. I think what's also worth bearing in mind is at what point do you transfer the Mangetout or the peas or the beans from the guttering into the ground. I think this is the maximum height you really want to be going to, and the reason is because as they start to get taller, they will start to look for something to climb to, and if you leave them too long in the guttering, they're going to be fairly leggy. They will eventually find their way up the support that you provide, but I think it's best to do it at this sort of height here, so that they immediately will start to look to find the support. Now, as you can see, the Mangetout is starting to grow quite nicely. I think I've been pretty ambitious with the length of the gutter, to be honest. It's probably a bit long, and I'll probably do cut it in half maybe for the next and then that gives me the chance to do different sowings, maybe even different varieties of beans as well. But we're going to go with what we've got here. Now, I've actually seen a video where people have done this all in one go. They stood at one end of the guttering and literally shuffled the guttering a little bit, and everything just falls into place. I'm not going to risk that, because the guttering is so long and I could end up with just a complete pile and mess of Mangetout in compost. So I'm going to do it bit by bit. I'll show you when I put the guttering into the trench exactly how I'm going to do it. So before I think about transferring the Mangetout out of the guttering, what I'm going to do is just gently squeeze the edges all the way along the gutter, just to detach them. You can see, hopefully you can see, it's just detaching or loosening the compost away from the gutter, just in case there's any areas where it might be sticking, just to make it easier to transfer it out of the guttering. And I'll do that all the way along before I then transfer it into the trench. Now, as I said, I've seen this done before, where I've seen somebody use guttering and they stood at one end and everything has just slid out perfectly into the trench. But I've also seen examples where that's been more difficult, where everything's sort of piled on top of each other. So what I'm going to do is look for a gap, say here, where there is a gap between the seedlings, and just put my trowel in the middle and literally loosen pull the guttering back, and then literally slide the Mangetout into position. There we go. And then what I can do then, I'm going to do that all the way along for the rest of them, and push them forward, and then push the soil back and secure the trench. And that way I'll reduce the risk of losing any Mangetout that may have collapsed when I've tried to do too much. So there's the first section that I've just shown you that has just been put in. That's where they were taken from in the guttering. So here's the next little section here where there's a nice gap. So I've made a little separation there, and all I'm going to do is slide them all the way to the end where they're going to go. Tidy up a bit of this compost here so they can go right next to them, and then literally I'm going to go along and pull the guttering out and then move it further along, and do that all the way along until all the Mangetout are in place. Another reason why you would possibly not let these grow too much before trying to transfer them to the ground is that if you can see the actual roots in here from the Mangetout that I've just separated here. Now that's great and that's healthy and that's brilliant, but this guttering has also got drainage holes in it as well. So the longer I leave it, the more the roots are going to get established, and the more potential is for the roots to grow through the holes, and that would make it more problematic when I try and get them out, because obviously they'd be sticking through the holes. So as I say, this just emphasises why you don't really want the Mangetout, the peas or the beans to get too big before you transfer them into the trench like I'm doing now. So there's all the Mangetout now out of the gutter. You can see the various sections because I haven't put the trench back yet, tied them up, and there's the empty gutter in there. And I'm really pleased with that, because I think that if I'd have tried to do that all in one go, because of the length of the gutter, I'd have ended up with a bit of a mess. So all I'm going to do now is just tidy up the trench, put the soil back, and make sure all the the Mangetout are nice and comfortable in their final position. And then I'll put the guttering back into the poly shed, and then I'll put some later sowings of beans or peas, or maybe even some further Mangetout in about 3 to 4 weeks time. So there you go, a nice, quick, simple and easy way to start off your climbing vegetables inside. Why not give it a go? Let me know in the comments below if you give it a try and how you get on, and maybe some of the things that you might start growing in that way. And if you do like the video, don't forget to give it the thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel for future videos on how to sow and grow fruit and veg and a few recipe ideas. And I'll see you all on the next video.